Hey everyone, this is Ashley with CT Arena Digitals. I've already done a tutorial to show how to use my Fine Art Seamless texture overlays in Photoshop, but I've been getting a lot of questions on how I personally blend them on my white backdrops with my clients and change the color, etc. So I just wanted to do an edit specifically for that one. I have open one of the overlays or one of the textures that I recently used, so I'm going to be using this one for the edit, and this is the images I'm going to be using. So first I'm going to come over to my image and go to my quick selection tool and select subject. You can also use it if you have your contextual taskbar open. You can use it on that or your lasso tool, however you want to select your subject. And then I'm just going to do a quick once over to make sure that everything's selected good enough. We obviously can go back in and fix it, but after the selection, I'm going to duplicate my background layer and create a layer mask. And then I'm going to come down here to my bottom image. I could file and place embedded and find the texture in my folders, but I already have it opened in Photoshop, so I'm just going to go ahead and select all, edit and copy, and edit and paste into my image here. And then I'm just going to go ahead and resize. I want to keep my proportions, so I'm going to click this box right up here and just resize it kind of where I want the texture to be on the backdrop. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller here. Sorry, my phone's going off. Okay, and then press OK. And now I'm going to change the blending mode. You can play around with blending modes here. Sometimes I use multiply, sometimes I leave it on normal. I like to do soft light with these a lot too, but if you go through them, you can kind of pick and choose which one you want to use. I'm actually, I think, going to use multiply on this one, and then I'm going to lower the opacity on that. And now I'm going to create the crease in the floor. So I want to, if you hide this and you already have a crease, you're going to want to do it on the crease that already exists on your original backdrop. But I don't have a crease here, but I can still kind of see where it would be on the image. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my rectangle marquee, and I'm going to drag from there all the way down to the bottom of my image, and then I'm going to go to my move tool and click one of those boxes there. Oops. And go to edit and transform and perspective. And then I'm going to take one of the bottom corners here and I'm just going to drag that out. And to me, this is really important to do if you're wanting that sweep look on your textures instead of it just being one solid texture on your backdrop. Then I'm going to click off of that there, and then I'm going to add a curves layer above my texture here. I'm going to go to curves. I'm going to create that clipping mask by clicking this right here, and I'm just going to bring that up until I like how it looks. Okay, and then I'm going to come to my layer mask here, and I'm going to use my black and white brush to kind of brush off and on. I always try to make it so I can brush off most of around the dress, especially when I'm working with tulle, because it can be really hard to blend. So I'm going to use my white brush. I'm going to do about 25% opacity first. And I'm just going to little by little brush off around my subject on the floor. And then I'm going to use a little bit smaller of a brush just to kind of brush off that tool a little bit. I'm going to use X on my keyboard to switch between my black and white brush. I'm going to use even lower opacity, about 10%, to brush back in some of the texture onto the bottom of her gown here. Just so if I zoom in here, you can see that I'm just blending it to where you can still see the gown, but I want, since she's in Tool, the very edges I like to brush off just a little bit so I can see the texture backdrop just the slightest bit through there, because if I was actually photographing her on this, we would be able to see that texture just a little bit through the tool. If you zoom in and you see any marks that are copied on or off quite a bit, make sure you fix that up. I probably should have done that first. I feel like I always do this. You should do that first, and I just jump right into painting the floor off. But you want to go around the edge of your subject and clean up any edges where the overlay copied too much onto your subject. I'm going to check her face and stuff as well and make sure that I'm still using a low opacity here. If you did this first, you could do it at a higher opacity, but I didn't. I made the mistake. So I'm just going to go around and make sure the edges look good. This one can be painted back on a little bit. Definitely want to make sure that none of the texture is on her skin. See up here, so I'm going to put my opacity back up to brush this back on, because I don't really want to see any of the texture through that part. Okay. Well, it really took over that part. You can fast forward through this part if you want. I had to brush off a lot more than I thought I would have to. Okay. Okay, so now I could be done with this if I wanted to keep the original color of the texture. Actually, I wouldn't. I want to add a little bit of blur to this. If you zoom in, this is quite sharp compared to her, and she's obviously standing in front of the backdrop, so I want to blur it a little bit. I'm not going to do much, but go up to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and I'm just going to do like 3 pixels. So if you wanted to keep the original color here, you can. So as you can see, this now looks like a backdrop because I added that floor, and if I get rid of it, it kind of just looks like she's standing on, seamless. But this gives it that backdrop look. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to merge my curves layer that I added to that, and then I'm going to need to change it back to multiply blending mode. So say she was already on a colored backdrop and you wanted it to blend into that, or if I want it to just seem gray and blend into my white, you can just add a black and white adjustment layer above it and go ahead and merge those. And again, you would need to change it back to multiply. And after you do that, you may want to add a curves layer and make it a little bit brighter or darker again, just depending. But if you're wanting to change the color, I just did one with this set recently where there was a baby blue where I was getting questions about how I achieved that. So instead of the black and white layer, I go ahead and go up to adjustments and do a hue saturation layer and make sure you're clipping that to the overlay here. And then you can slide your hue slider to whichever color you want. So here's a blue color, and then I would desaturate that just a little bit. And then kind of, actually that green, I know I did the blue with my other one, but this is how I did it, but I would do green for this one just to match her gown. Zoom in here so I can kind of match it a little bit better. And then I may lower the opacity on this just a little bit more. I like my overlays to be subtle, especially on white. Okay, before and after, it adds such a different look, but it seems so subtle. I may add a just a tiny bit more blur too. Okay, zoom back in. I'm gonna looks just like a little bit of I want to blend here a little bit between my dress and the floor, so I'm just gonna add a layer above that, and I'm gonna make it, I think, let's do color layer. And then I'm going to come back down to my overlay here, and I'm just going to hold down Alt my keyboard, and I'm just going to grab a color from there. Actually, I might even grab it from her dress. Kind of a green to match this. And then I'm only going to do this on like 15% opacity, my brush. And I just want to kind of brush that in. I don't feel like it's doing very much. Maybe I'll go up to a higher opacity and then just lower the... Okay, so I don't want to do color. Maybe I want to do multiply instead. I'm going to add a new layer. I'm going to get rid of that one. Change it to multiply. I'm just trying to blend the dress a little bit more down there. Didn't need much. There we go. It was too bright. The dress was too bright down there. I'll show you before and after. It was just too, the dress was too bright down at the end, and my eyes were kind of going to it instead of up at her face. So I just wanted to add that in there. But those are the different ways you can use it. You can use it with its original color, which was the brownish, or you can add a black and white layer to it if you want it to blend in with the color of your original backdrop that you shot on, or you can use add a hue saturation layer to change the color completely if you want it to match, which is what I typically do with my images. If you have any questions, you can send me a message. If you are a studio photographer, I would love for you to join my group on Facebook. I will link it in the description. If you are wanting more free videos like this one, please be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel to be notified when more are added.